Beyond the Gates spoilers for Friday, September 12, 2025 tease that Allison continues to bounce like a live wire even as the steel of her cell bites into her wrists and the fluorescent lights whine overhead. The teasing tone isn't dulled by bars or clumsy handling. If anything, it's taken on a new, animalistic quality. In the visiting room, Allison sings softly, a winding lullaby, less melody than declaration, each note a punctuation mark, a signature, a reassurance that nothing, no indictment, no charge sheet can erase the script she's been writing for years. She tilts her head the way she used to in photos, the way she did for the camera, and there's a practiced vulnerability there that cuts cleaner than rage. Chelsea arrived in a coat too light for the season and found the room smelling like the late-night shots of similar rooms they'd both been forced to watch, disinfectant and the faint scent of bitter coffee from the coffee shop. Her palms were damp. She'd rehearsed what she'd say, she'd honed each word over the past week of sleepless nights. She wouldn't be cute, she told herself. She'd have to be precise. Allison doesn't let her be precise. Instead she greets Chelsea with that benign, lopsided smile like a woman who has been expecting a guest at a party she arranged to host in someone else's living room. Her voice is small but not contrite. "You," she croons, and the single syllable carries the gossip of a million direct messages. "You came." The word is both a greeting and a verdict. It is the same voice that learned to turn every slight into an international story and every small mercy into an arming. Followers would rally, hashtags would spin, column inches would feed the echo. Chelsea says the words she practiced. "Why did you?" The question breaks off. The question cannot survive the light that Allison gives it. "Why did you send those messages?" Quietly, like someone pleased to be in on a private joke. The laugh is a lever, and immediately the room compresses around it. "Honey," Allison says, the title both tender and, unmistakably, predatory. "Why are you so dramatic?" "I've always talked to my fans." "Isn't that what you wanted? Attention? Validation?" "You made your choices." There's a deliberate cruelty in the way she pronounces the word fans, as if Chelsea is misunderstanding the transaction. It's not about attention, it's about authorship. Allison makes herself the author of other people's stories. She turns interactions into source material, offhand remarks into plot points, private doubts into chapters that her followers will annotate and monetize. She gestures toward the plexiglass between them like a director pointing at the stage. "Look, the scene is framed. The shot will cut here and everyone will tweet about it." Chelsea has been awake at night with that gesture. The digital crosshairs of Allison's life, her posts, her lives, her comments have become a map of trespass. Allison had not only messaged Chelsea but had created a landscape where Chelsea's every move could be tracked and speculated upon. When Allison tells her, almost fondly, that she was so good at interacting with Chelsea on social media, the praise is a blade disguised as flattery. "Do you know how entertained people were? Do you know how many of my followers argued about you? Do you know how much they loved your face when you said that thing about your mother?" She names a private memory with a triviality that makes Chelsea feel like a ghost recalled by strangers. Chelsea's breath catches because the proof of surveillance feels like an old wound reopened. She had thought the messages private. She had thought the late-night inbox pings were a private, if unwelcome, correspondence. She had not understood that Allison's methods were a spray painter's hand on a city mural. Nothing is simply private in an environment where everything is a prop. Chelsea'd been performing, without a script, for a camera she didn't know existed. The thought that she had been watched, enjoyed, digested, turned into content sharpens into shame and a new, roiling fear. Allison watches the effect like a surgeon satisfied with the taut suture. "You should be careful," she says, as if offering advice. "You never know which strangers are your real friends and which ones are just betting on your collapse." It is a warning dressed as a compliment, the precise kind of manipulation that made her the figure she was. She does not need to shout. She does not need to attack. The knowledge that she can and did reach into Chelsea's quietest corners is enough to make the chest tighten and the world tilt toward anxiety. In the corner of the room, Jacob glares through the smeared glass. He is raw with a different kind of anger, not the coiled, performative anger that Allison understands and wields, but the domestic, impatient kind that has to do with propriety, with the absurdity of the public being dragged through private messes. He hates Alison's songs, the way she hums lines, the way she turns a tune into something uncanny, gnaws at him because it reads like mockery of institutions that have already failed those they were supposed to protect. He has been pacing the way men who think they are in control of nothing do back and forth, making little territorial circles in the visiting room. He finally leans close to the glass and mouths, not for the tape or the cameras but for some imagined counsel, choose a lawyer. It is not a request, it is an order. To Jacob, law is the place where rationality can live. He imagines that once Allison is properly represented she will have to stop performing and start answering. He imagines the courtroom as a place that can contain her, make her finite, give her actions names and consequences. He imagines a lawyer as a seal on a bottle. Allison smiles like a woman who has already mapped the bottle's contents. I have one, she says, leisurely. He will be here soon. The pronoun he is a promise and a provocation. Jacob's jaw tightens because the idea of his family being cross-examined by Allison's skill at spectacle of his sister Naomi and his life being names under the microscope of Allison's narrative makes him feel not powerless but impotent. He hates that Allison knows how to alter the stage lights so they will favor her and, by contrast, make him look clumsy and reactive. Naomi enters like a small storm. She is both late and immediate, hair loose, face glossy with something between regret and rage. Jacob has not had time to process her entrance. There is some small comic timing to the way he opens his mouth. Naomi, what? And Allison interrupts the sentence with the precision of a trained showrunner. You finally came, Allison says to Naomi. And this time the tone has no tenderness at all. It is accusation and history. Naomi's steps freeze for a fraction of a second, and it is the moment that reveals everything. Allison and Naomi are not just sisters in the way other sisters are sisters, they are two people who have used proximity as a battleground. Allison makes her accusation like a spelunking into memory. You always liked the quiet, she says. You always liked the way people listened to you when you were sober. It is a petty, specific jab, and Naomi's face, which is usually an expert mask of composure, splits at the edges. The air between them tightens until voices are sharp knives. Allison names things the way she names a piece of art, as if ownership can be assigned by the simple act of naming. Naomi, who grew up with Allison's barbs like stones in her pocket, wants to answer with violence. For a heartbeat there is the possibility of something physical, proof that this rivalry is not mere performance. Jacob is startled by the vehemence in Naomi's burr. She has always been the quieter sister, the one who assembled practical comforts while Allison wrote her name in the smoke. To see her push to edges an alarm bell. The guard is watching with a mixture of boredom and professional attention. He steps toward them, the dull clack of his shoes on linoleum a punctuation that says, keep it theatrical, keep it within the rules. Naomi says nothing, she can barely speak. For her, Allison's words are less an attack than a map back to a history she thought she'd muffled into silence. There are debts and favors and betrayals between them that no outside observer will ever fully understand. Allison's talent has always been to press those hot points into the open, to make them feeding material. She does not have to lay hands on Naomi to wound her, she simply has to mention the names of old humiliations. Chelsea goes home that night with the smell of antiseptic still in her clothes and a nameless exhaustion in her bones. She moves through the small, narrow apartment like someone half expecting the phone to buzz with a new harassment campaign. The familiar shape of the walls feels suddenly foreign because every corner could be a frame. She calls her mother, Danny, because the voice of a parent feels like a shore. When Danny answers, she is not surprised by Chelsea's fragility. There is a steady, practiced patience on the other end of the line. Danny has already been through this. Physical bodies can forgive, reputations, once lit, are harder to extinguish. Danny's disappointment is not theatrical, it is the tired sorrow of someone who has watched patterns repeat, of a mother who sees the tracks and knows where they end. They're going to talk about her, Danny says, and in the voice there is both a tired cynicism and a maternal steadiness. You know Allison. She will sing, she will charm, she will do what she always does. The phrase is both warning and consolation, expect the performance. and thus be prepared for your own silence to be taken from you. Dani explains because she has taught that Allison's taunts to Chelsea were inevitable, a strategy learned from years of turning private pain into public spectacle. She uses words to keep Chelsea from feeling that the world has been personally designed against her. "You were targeted because you were vulnerable," Dani says. "That doesn't make you stupid, that makes you human." Chelsea wants to believe that understanding the mechanism will make her less exposed. But knowing how a trick works doesn't always blunt the shamed knowledge that you were used, and that your reaction powered someone else's fame. Chelsea's eyes sting because it seems so childish to have been undone by someone else's attention. She cries not only because she fears for herself but because she is certain that she has been the crumb trail that led Allison to other appetites. In the confession there is a more terrible admission: she fears she was not merely observed, she fears she was instrumental. Dani hears the word "led" and soothes it into something softer. "You didn't lead her anywhere," she says. "People who want to hurt do not need invitations. They see weakness where there is only living." Mothers are used to drawing lines under accusations. But Dani is also pragmatic. She understands that the stars, the social constellations of influence that Allison inhabited, are often tighter and smaller than they appear on camera. The seeming breadth of Allison's reach often disguises the intimacy of her real leverage: a few powerful followers, a handful of inside contacts, and a talent for finding a person's pressure points. Dani wants Chelsea to see that Allison's stage is populated with people who, privately, are flawed and who will betray her. There is no omnipotence there, just a crafty, focused will. Still, Chelsea can't shake the sense that her understanding of fame and power is childish. She had always imagined celebrities as vast and jagged, almost mythical in their separation from ordinary lives. She had not guessed the closeness of the machinery, the human hands that move a narrative along. She is suddenly aware that what she thought were invisible walls are, in fact, thin curtains easily parted by a practiced hand. Dani reassures her, knowledge is a weapon, and learning the mechanics is not admitting defeat. But Dani also makes a practical choice. "You need to be away from the heat," she says. "Stay with Madison. She can keep you safe while we figure this out." Dani's voice is both a restraint and a strategy. In taking Chelsea away from the most immediate pressure, she allows time for truths to be sorted from lies, for evidence to be gathered, for the law to do what the law can do. Chelsea agrees without protest. Moving to Madison's place feels safer because Madison is a measured person, practical, warm, someone who does not allow melodrama to take hold. When Chelsea tells Madison the story, she leaves the edges raw. She explains that she tried to resist Allison's intimidation. She explains that the digital harassment felt like a siege. And then she says the thing she has been keeping in the darkest pocket of herself, to keep her life when the threats adopted the flavor of real danger. She agreed to marry the kidnapper. Madison's arms close around her like a damp, solid promise. The confession lands like a small stone in an already churning pond. It ripples outward into the complexities of survival. People who have been forced into arrangements often adopt them not out of love but out of an urgent calculus: marry, and you keep your breath; refuse, and the consequences remain unspecified. Madison does not judge. She understands the psychology of survival too intimately. She has read the studies and known the women whose choices are rational in a world that is, at times, incapable of protecting them. She wraps her arms around Chelsea and whispers what any good friend whispers when someone has been forced into an impossible corner: "You did what you had to do." There is a complicated grieving in that consolation. Chelsea must hold two truths simultaneously: that her marriage to the kidnapper was a survival strategy, and that the existence of that contract is a wound. There will be legal and symbolic implications to unpicking that knot, but in the immediate term the fact she survived is the primary fact. Madison's embrace is simple and secular: no theatrics, no metaphors, just fingers running through hair, and the steady rhythm of breath as a small anchor. Back at the jail, the story of who aligned with whom becomes more tangled. Jacob finds himself stunned with a new disbelief. He never thought his wife, Naomi, would assist the kidnapper of her own sister. There is an almost biblical incomprehension to the idea. How could a marriage's promise and a biological tie be folded into the same betrayal? But this is part of Allison's genius, or at least part of the rumor Allison cultivated. She could insinuate herself into relationships and make loyalties fuzzy. Make people choose between self-preservation and truth. Jacob's bristling confusion is not only an expression of moral outrage but also of personal bewilderment. His life hasn't been a theater of betrayals, it has been a small, household kind of existence where people keep one another's secrets in order to survive. Family. Allison, always theatrical, seems to know precisely which key to twist. She asks for Naomi to defend her. The request is absurd enough to be an art form. It's like asking the accused's neighbor to defend the accused's arson. It is performative and cruel because Allison must know how it will hum inside Naomi's head. The chemical rush of past affection, the possibility that a defense might be an act of love, the sixth sense that public loyalty could be privatized. Naomi does not answer in words. She answers in reflex, because some parts of family are too old to be curated into calm rhetoric. She lunges. Jacob sees the motion. Naomi's hand goes for Allison's throat, a desperate attempt to reassert what cannot be measured by testimony. He dives in, holding her back, the guard shouting for calm. Naomi's fingers find only fabric and chain link. She howls with the kind of fury that comes from someone who has had their history weaponized. No, Naomi spits, and the word is spittle and vow bundled together. I will not defend you. In that single, explosive sentence she disavows not only the possibility of legal counsel but the psychological contract that ties them together. The room leans toward violence like the final bars before a storm. Jacob clutches Naomi close because her frenzy is a live wire he cannot touch. And he knows that if she gets to Allison she might do something that will make the headlines irrevocably worse. Allison sits back as if the scuffle were exactly the climax she intended. Others will remember the moment Naomi, the quiet sister, lunged. They will analyze it, assign motives, write think pieces. And then Allison does the thing that makes the guard look up in weary curiosity. She smiles and asks for something else. It is the same tactic she has used with Chelsea and Naomi. When the obvious gambits are exhausted, she introduces a new variable that bends everyone's attention back to her. What she requests next is the seed of a different sort of terror for those watching. She does not ask for a plea deal, nor does she ask for pity. She asks for presence, the kind of presence an opponent cannot easily ignore. I want an audience, she says, with the steady calm of a woman who has negotiated her own myth. Not the cameras, not the press. I want them. She gestures toward the glass, toward the living room of the world outside the cell at the trial. I want everyone who matters to be present. I want them to see me own the stage. The words are both diluted and calculated, but to the people in the room they sound like a threat and a promise. Jacob's shoulders go hard. Naomi's breathing comes back in ragged bursts. Chelsea, wherever she is, will feel the tremor of them even if she cannot name it yet. Danny has made the tactical choice to send Chelsea away, but Allison's insistence on spectacle is a promise that the world will continue to spin around her axis. Even locked up, she can summon an audience. She has made her life a practice of arranging rooms so every entrance is an opportunity to perform. She has made social media into a theater of accusation and a gallery of sympathy. And now she stakes her claim on the formal ritual of the courtroom. Nobody speaks because the request is both ridiculous and dangerous. It will make the trial a show. It will make private pain into public entertainment. It will ensure that every testimony becomes material, and every witness will be parsed, loved, hated, dissected on feeds for months. Jacob envisions the worst: Chelsea's face in a stream, Naomi's grief parsed into memes, Danny's sorrow turned into a hashtag. The image is intolerable. Naomi, addressing both the absurdity and the cruelty of Allison's request, lashes out in words that carry the weight of history. "You will not use my life as a backdrop," she says. Allison's smile slips into something like disappointment and then, immediately, triumph. She loves that people care. She loves that they will choose sides. She loves that she can orchestrate outrage. "Maybe you'll be surprised," she says softly. Maybe you will find that the people you think you can trust are exactly the people who will make you small. And maybe, and here she leans forward as if leaning into a camera even when there is none, maybe some of them will find that they like the sound of my voice more than the truth. The statement is both a boast and a question, and the sound of it in the sterile visiting room feels like the long exhale before a storm. No one knows what she will demand next. They only know the itch of anticipation she spreads. Chelsea, meanwhile, wrapped in Madison's calm and Danny's strategy, can only guess at the new shapes of injury. She had thought the hardest part was surviving the marriage, the humiliation of being bound legally to an abuser. She had thought the worst was Allison's public dismantling of her privacy. But Allison has proven repeatedly that the worst is an elasticity, the ability to stretch harm into new forms, to make every legal and social mechanism into fodder. So the first act ends not with closure but with the slow turning of a key. A lawyer will come. A trial will be staged. People will be asked to pick sides. New demands will be made. These sort of requests that turn courtrooms into theaters, friends into critics, and family into fodder. Allison has not stopped performing. She has only moved the performance inside the building that promises impartiality. And that is a dangerous metamorphosis. In this room, history will be named, but the naming will not be neat. The night closes with Naomi held, Jacob furious, Chelsea gone, Danny plotting, Madison holding a trembling woman who has been forced into a marriage for the sake of keeping her life. Allison hums a tune that no one can yet quite place, and the sound hangs in people's ears, a thread without a knot. A promise without a plan. They all walk out of the visitation room as the fluorescent light continues to buzz. None of them are whole. None of them will be the same. The world, watching through live feeds and tabloid columns, will hunger for answers. But the only person who seems at ease is Allison, who, behind the glass, is already composing the next act as if the trial were simply another stage and the jurors and journalists were her newest audience. The immediate future is not resolution but escalation. Each person in that small room understands the cost of that escalation in a different language: shame, rage, strategy, survival. They leave with the sense that whatever Allison asks next will require all of them to choose not only how they will speak but how much of themselves they are willing to let be spoken.